My family ignored me for years. At Thanksgiving, I casually mentioned my $160 million fortune. My sister's jaw dropped, and my dad just stared in silence. I learned how to be invisible when I was 9 years old. That was the year my sister Sophie turned 18, and she received her first automobile, a shiny new BMW wrapped in a large red ribbon in our driveway. I watched from my bedroom window as she shrieked and danced up and down, hugging our parents as the neighbors came to congratulate them on raising such a wonderful daughter. Nobody saw me standing there in my second-hand sweater and thrift shop slacks. Sophie was the golden kid since she was born. She was 7 years older than me and arrived while my parents were still youthful and ambitious, believing they could shape the perfect daughter. By the time I arrived, I believe I was more of an accident than a plan. The zeal had faded off. The baby books remained empty. After my first birthday, the photo book was no longer updated. My parents had a modestly successful insurance firm in Connecticut. We were not wealthy, but we were comfortable. Or at least Sophie was. She went to Westfield Academy, a private institution that cost more per year than most people's automobiles. I went to Franklin Public School, which was 3 blocks from our house and had ceiling tiles that leaked when it rained and textbooks with copyright dates from the 2000s. When I questioned why Sophie got to go to private school when I didn't, my mother gave me a look like I was asking why the sky was blue. Sophie requires more stimulus. Sweetheart, she is talented. You're doing very great where you are. Fine. That term tormented me as a youngster. Sophie was extraordinary, smart, and bound for greatness. I was okay. Sophie's 17th birthday present was a vacation to Paris with our parents. For mine, I spent $30 on a grocery store cake. I bought a second-hand graphing calculator for school because mine had broken, and I knew better than to ask for a replacement. Initially, I was not bitter about the inequity. I was too young to realize what was going on. I figured this was how families functioned. Some students got more because they deserved it. I assimilated that thinking until it became a part of my personality. But I also developed something my sister never had: ingenuity. While Sophie was having French and violin lessons, I was training myself to code using library books and free internet courses. While she spent her summers at pricey camps in the Adirondacks, I worked at a small grocery store and saved every dime. While she was deciding which Ivy League school she would go, I was applying to state I was accepted into the University of Institutions and praying for scholarships. Connecticut on a full academic scholarship. My parents treated me to supper at Applebee's to celebrate. When Sophie was admitted to Yale and my parents paid full tuition, they had a garden party for 50 people complete with a catered buffet and a champagne toast. I ate 3 sliders and left the party early. Nobody noticed. College became my escape route. I double majored in computer science and mathematics, worked 2 part-time jobs, and spent my leisure time honing my talents. Most of my vacations were spent away from home. I told my parents I was busy with job or studies, which was true. But really I couldn't stand watching Sophie return home to fanfare and joy while I got sidetracked with, "Oh, you're here too." During my junior year, something snapped. To supplement my income, I've started working as a freelance developer, creating websites and applications for small businesses. One of my clients reported that their organization was having inventory management issues and was wasting thousands of dollars due to inefficient supply chain tracking. Over the Christmas break, I created a solution for them. It was tough, but it worked. They paid me $6,500, which was the most money I'd ever seen at once. But here's what was important. They informed others about it. Within 6 months, I had 10 organizations requesting comparable solutions. I reduced to part-time student status and focused entirely on developing better, more complicated software. I slept 4 hours a night, lived off ramen and coffee, and programmed till my fingers ached. The software evolved. I dubbed it SupplySync, and it grew into something far greater than I could have imagined. A full supply chain management platform capable of integrating with current systems and providing real-time statistics. I was 21 years old and ran a real technology firm from my dorm room. I earned my bachelor's degree at the age of 22. Sophie had graduated from Yale the previous year and was working at a top marketing business in Manhattan, living in an apartment that our parents had helped her acquire. They were quite proud. They would exhibit images of her corner office as if they had created it themselves. I was still invisible. They were aware that I had graduated and that I was working with computers, but they were uninterested in the facts. When I tried to explain what SupplySync accomplished, my father would graciously nod and shift the conversation to Sophie's recent client presentation. So I stopped trying to explain. There was one occasion, however, that nearly destroyed my determination to remain silent. I was 23, and I went home for Easter, which was one of the few occasions I had made the journey. Sophie had recently become engaged to her first fiancé, a lawyer named Ethan, whom my parents admired. The engagement lasted 8 months until he cheated on her. But that day, she was flaunting her ring to everyone who came through the door. I just signed my second large contract, for $300,000, which will allow me to recruit 5 additional workers. I was unable to suppress my enthusiasm. Over supper, I tried again. I have some good news, I announced during a gap in the Sophie worship session. Mom glanced at me with mild interest. Oh, did you meet someone, honey? No, it's for work. I recently signed a major customer. The contract is wonderful, dear, Dad said, without glancing up from his phone. Sophie, your mother and I were thinking we should have an engagement party here at the house, maybe rent a tent for the backyard. Sophie shrieked, and the discussion changed completely. I excused myself, went upstairs to my childhood bedroom, which had been converted into Sophie's gift-wrapping station, complete with rolls of expensive paper and elaborate bows, and called my business partner, Olivia. My news was dying in my throat as I watched them plan a party for a relationship that would not even last a year. She had been with me since the beginning, a bright developer I'd met through a coding forum. They don't care, I told her, sitting on the floor, surrounded by Sophie's wedding preparation supplies. Then stop telling them, Olivia answered simply. Lily, you don't need their approval. Build your empire, let the art speak for itself. That talk altered everything. Olivia was correct. I'd been looking for crumbs of recognition from people who would never see me as anything more than Sophie's forgettable little sister. From that point forward, I channeled every ounce of hurt, dismissal, and forgotten moment into creating something undeniable. At 23, I got my first major contract, a regional logistics company that paid me $250,000 to implement SupplySync throughout their entire operation. I hired my first 2 employees, both brilliant developers I met online, who believed in what we were building. At 24, a national retailer signed on, then another, and another. At 25, I had 47 employees and $7 million in annual revenue. At 26, a venture capital firm offered me $18 million for 30% of the company, which I reduced to 20% for $12 million. My lawyer nearly had a heart attack at my confidence, but I understood what SupplySync was worth. I could have informed my family then, and I could have turned up at Christmas with news of my achievement, proving that I was more than simply okay. But something stopped me. Perhaps pride. Maybe it was the memory of every dismissive comment, every forgotten birthday, every time I'd been an afterthought in my own family. But I wanted to see how far I could go while they weren't looking. I wanted to build something so undeniable that they'd have to see me. So I stayed quiet, lived modestly in a small apartment in Boston, drove a Honda Civic, and kept building. At 27, SupplySync went international. We signed contracts in Canada, Mexico, and the United Kingdom, and revenue reached $25 million. I moved into a nicer apartment, but nothing flashy, and bought a nicer car, a Lexus, but kept the Honda too. When I was 28, the acquisition offers began to come in, from tech behemoths who wanted to absorb SupplySync into their empires, offering exorbitant sums of money. I turned them all down because this was mine, and I wasn't ready to give it up. The first $120 million offer came from a Silicon Valley behemoth, but they wanted to completely dismantle SupplySync and integrate the technology into their existing platform, so I declined within 24 hours. The second offer was $170 million from a European conglomerate. Better money, but they wanted to transfer me to Frankfurt and phase out my whole staff within a year. My board thought I was mad. Lily, these are life-changing offers, one investor told me during a heated meeting. You're leaving hundreds of millions on the table. I'm not interested in money that comes with conditions that betray everything I've built, I said. SupplySync is more than simply code. It's a team. It is a vision. Claire Matthews, the CEO of Innovix Technologies, was a woman who had created her own business from the ground up, and she saw the value of SupplySync. We met for coffee in Boston, and she presented a plan that honored what I had produced. I don't want to absorb SupplySync, Claire explained, swirling her coffee. I'd want to increase it. You remain CEO. Your crew remains intact. We give the necessary infrastructure and cash to become genuinely global. You maintain your vision. We give you the resources to make it bigger than you ever could alone. I listened to her pitch for 2 hours, and by the end, I knew this was different. The negotiations took 3 months, and my lawyers and their lawyers argued over every detail. I fought for my team, ensuring generous retention bonuses and equity packages. Claire grinned across the conference table when we eventually agreed on $280 million with all of my demands fulfilled, saying, "You drive a hard bargain." I battled for creative autonomy, the power to reject choices that jeopardized our essential beliefs, and everything else that was important to me. "I know my worth," I said. "I've spent my entire life having others undervalue me. I'm finished with that." Innovix Technologies made a $270 million offer to acquire SupplySync, but keep it as an independent subsidiary. I would remain CEO and maintain creative control, while they would provide the infrastructure to scale globally. I couldn't refuse the offer. I negotiated up to $310 million, and after taxes, legal fees, and setting aside money for my employees' bonuses, I personally walked away with $160 million. I kept $25 million liquid and invested the rest in a diversified portfolio created by my financial advisor. At the age of 28, I had more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes, and my family had no idea. Sophie, on the other hand, had become engaged to Chase, a hedge fund manager. My father once suggested I apply for a job at his insurance company because they needed someone with computer skills, and my mother would occasionally ask if I was still programming, as if it was a hobby I might outgrow. My parents were overjoyed, so I flew in for the engagement party, gave them a $300 gift card to their registry, and left before the speeches began. Sophie didn't notice I was gone until the next day, and the acquisition closed in October. By November, I'd settled into my new role, signed a 5-year contract with Innovix Technologies, and began planning what to do with my newfound wealth. I donated anonymously to my old public school, funding a complete technology lab renovation, and established scholarship funds. I also purchased my first real piece of luxury, a beautiful house in Brookline with a view of the Charles River. But I didn't post about it or tell anyone outside of my close circle. Thanksgiving was approaching, and for the first time in years, I wanted to go home, not because I'd softened toward my family, but because I'd realized something. Their opinion of me no longer mattered. I'd spent so long desperate for their validation, recognition, and pride, but I didn't need it anymore. I'd validated myself. I contacted my mother to confirm my arrival, and she seemed shocked. "Oh, excellent. Honey, Sophie and Chase will also be there. Chase's parents could come by. It'll be a wonderful family reunion." A pause. "You're still doing that computer stuff, right? Are you earning enough to get by? Your father knows someone who might be hiring." I smiled at the phone. "I'm fine, Mom. Really fine." "That's good. See you Thursday." I packed a suitcase, including one special item. The folder with the acquisition documentation, which I had been storing not for a spectacular surprise. I didn't know if I'd say anything at all, but I wanted it with me as a reminder of what I'd accomplished without them. The drive to Connecticut felt different this time. Normally I'd spend the entire trip preparing myself for disappointment, preparing to be overlooked and undervalued. This time, I listened to music and enjoyed the fall colors. But there was something else too. A strange calm I'd never felt before. I kept thinking about a conversation I'd had with my therapist, Dr. Chen, the week before. I'd started seeing her 2 years ago, finally ready to unpack the damage of growing up invisible. "Why do you want to go to Thanksgiving?" She'd asked me. "What do you hope to gain from this?" I had been sitting with that question for a long time. "I think I want to see if I still care," I eventually concluded. "If their opinion of me still has power over me, which it does, then I know I still have work to do. But if it doesn't," I'd smiled, "then I'm free." Dr. Chen had nodded. "Just remember, Lily, freedom doesn't require their recognition. You do not have to prove anything to them." "I know," I'd responded, and I meant it. Now, as I drove into my parents' driveway, I felt that reality sink into my bones. I wasn't here to prove anything. I was here to see who I'd become despite them, or maybe to say goodbye to the girl who'd spent so many years desperate for their love. When I arrived Wednesday evening, the house looked exactly the same, with the same manicured lawn and expensive cars in the driveway. Sophie's BMW had been upgraded to a Mercedes 2 years ago. The same chandelier was visible through the front window, and Mom greeted the door with an instinctual hug. "You did it. Come inside. Come inside." Sophie and Chase are in the living room. Sophie looked up from the couch where she was looking through her phone. Chase sat beside her, looking exactly like every hedge fund manager I'd ever seen. An expensive suit even on a casual Wednesday, perfectly styled hair, and a watch that cost more than most people's cars. She'd always been beautiful, tall, blonde, and effortlessly graceful, making people turn their heads. "Hey, Em," Sophie murmured, her focus already returned to her phone. Long time. Hey. I laid my luggage down. How's the wedding planning going? Oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. We're looking at venues for next June and everything excellent is already booked. Mom has been assisting me. Thank God. Chase's mother too. It's basically a full-time job, she remarked, barely glancing up from her phone. Dad arrived from his desk, reading spectacles perched on his nose. Good to see you, Lily. How are things going on the job? It is good. Very good. Do you still have computers? Yes, Dad. Still using computers? He nodded, already losing interest. Well, that's steady employment. I'm hoping for good benefits. Sophie sneered. Dad, she is a programmer, not a doctor. The advantages are presumably simple. I could have corrected her. I might have highlighted that my benefits package at Innovix Technologies included complete health care, unlimited PTO, stock options, and a personal financial advisor. Instead, I claimed they were acceptable. My compensation alone was $700,000 per year, excluding incentives. Thanksgiving Day arrived with the typical chaos. Mom had been cooking since dawn, rejecting help but yet whining about how much labor it was. Sophie directed Chase around like he was a staff member, having him move furniture and set up the dining room to her specifications. I helped where I could, mostly staying in the kitchen, chopping vegetables and trying not to get in the way. Aunt Laura arrived around noon with her husband, Uncle Dan, and their 2 children. Laura was Mom's older sister, and she had always been cut from the same cloth, obsessed with appearances and success. Ryan and Ava, her children, were now adolescents with entitled attitudes that stemmed from never being told no. Lily, Laura kissed both of my cheeks. Look at you, still single. I see. Do not worry, honey, the proper guy will come along. You simply need to put yourself out there more. Maybe try one of those apps. I'm not really looking right now on Laura. Oh, nonsense. Everyone's looking. You don't want to end up alone, do you? She turned to Sophie. Now, Sophie, tell me everything about the wedding. I want all the details. I retreated to the kitchen. Dinner was called at 3 p.m. We all gathered around the extended dining table, Mom and Dad at the heads, Sophie and Chase on one side with Laura's family, and me squeezed in between Ryan and Uncle Dan on the other side. Dad remarked, Grace, we passed dishes. Conversation began, and as usual, it concentrated on Sophie. There was turkey stuffing, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, and canned cranberry sauce that no one ate. So Chase, my dad began. Sophie tells me you just got promoted. Chase grinned modestly. Yes, sir. Managing director. It's a significant step up. That is fantastic. You two are actually creating a life together. I'm very proud. Dad smiled at them. Thank you, Mr. Reed. We are very excited about the future. Sophie grasped Chase's hand. We're searching for properties in Westchester with at least 5 bedrooms and a decent school district. We hope to start a family in a few years. Mom absolutely sparkled. Oh, Sophie, that's fantastic. You're going to be a lovely mommy. I felt a shift inside me as I observed this encounter. There was no envy or grief, just an anthropological wonder. I studied my mother's face as she gazed adoringly at Sophie, trying to remember if she'd ever looked at me that way, but I couldn't recall a single instance. Dad was beaming at Chase, as if he'd personally selected him from a catalog of perfect sons-in-law. You have a good head on your shoulders, son. Sophie is blessed to have you. Chase smiled humbly, but I noticed a faint smirk, the grin of a guy who understood just how precious he was in this family's eyes. He was the golden son-in-law for the golden daughter, another accomplishment for them to boast about. While building Supply Sync, I reflected on my own dating life, which had been sparse. I'd had relationships, a few serious ones, but I'd never brought anyone home. What was the point? So they could compare him to Chase? So my mother could make that pinched expression she gets when I do anything that draws attention away from Sophie? No, I'd kept that part of my life separate, protected, just like everything else that mattered to me. Laura leaned forwards. What is your budget for the home? We're looking in the 1.5 to 2.5 million range, Chase remarked casually, like he was talking the weather. Everyone made pleased sounds. Ryan inquired if they'd have a pool, and Ava asked if she might come. I ate my turkey and said nothing. And the wedding, Laura added. Have you made a budget for it? Sophie laughed. We wanted to be unique. We're thinking about $250,000. Dad is assisting with part of it, and Chase's folks are also contributing. $250,000 for one day. I considered about the scholarships that money could finance and the lives it might alter, but I kept that notion to myself. You deserve it, sweetheart, she added. It's your special day. Sophie's wedding, Sophie's future house, Sophie's work, Chase's advancement, their wonderful life together. I might have easily been a piece of furniture. Uncle Dan, to his credit, ultimately reached out to me. So, Lily, how about you? How is your work going? The table became silent, and everyone stared at me with hazy curiosity, as if I were ready to deliver a weather report. It's going well, I said simply. Are you still doing computer programming? Dad inquired. Yeah, that's nice, honey. Mom replied in that tone. That actually meant, can we get back to talking about Sophie now? Sophie genuinely laughed. Lily is being modest. I'm sure she is doing well with her tiny applications or whatever. Little apps. My software handled millions of transactions every day over 4 continents, but they were little apps. Actually, I heard myself add, I've recently had some changes at work. Oh, Mom said, perking up somewhat. Did you receive a promotion? That's nice, dear. Something like that. Sophie was already looking bored and reaching for her wineglass while Chase was checking his phone beneath the table. I sold my company, I murmured, and the words lingered in the air for a while. Everyone was still digesting and didn't fully grasp. What is your company? Dad's face wrinkled. I thought you worked for somebody else. No, I've owned my own firm for 7 years. Supply Sync. It is a supply chain management software platform. I was the founder and CEO. Sophie's fingers froze halfway to her mouth. Wait, what? I started it in college. I built it up. We conducted operations in 8 nations last month. I sold it to Innovix Technologies. The stillness was oppressive and Laura's fork clattered against her plate. I took a sip of water, allowing the moment to stretch. The sale was $280 million, and after taxes and other charges, I cleared $160 million myself. I apologize. Did you say millions? Yes. That's not possible. Sophie gasped. You are a coder. You live in a little apartment and drive a Honda. I still own my Honda, but I also purchased a Lexus. And the flat isn't small. It's only minimal. I also just purchased a home in Brooklyn. Chase was gazing at me like I had a second head. Brooklyn? Those houses begin at... Mine was $4 million, I responded quietly. Waterfront, 5 bedrooms, 3-vehicle garage. I paid cash. Sophie's face had become white. It's a joke. This must be a joke. It's not a joke. I took out my phone, opened my banking app, and showed them the amount of simply my checking account. $25,500,000, which I kept liquid. The rest is invested. Laura shrieked, frightening everyone. Oh my God, that's real. That's a real number. Mom snatched the phone from my grasp, peering at it as if it could bite her. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. How are you, Lily? When did this happen? I've been developing Supply Sync since I was 21. 7 years. I've had large clientele for 5 years. I just never acknowledged it since no one asked. I looked Sophie in the eyes and said, You said I was doing fine with my little apps. You were not mistaken. I was okay. Better than fine. Dad had turned absolutely pale. But why didn't you tell us? We are your family. Because you never wanted to know. Every time I tried to discuss my work, you turned the conversation to Sophie. Every accomplishment I had was ignored. Every time I returned home, I was invisible. My voice was firm and quiet. So, I stopped trying to be noticed by you. I created something magnificent without your approval, aid, or even your notice. Sophie smacked her fingers against the table. This is... You made us believe you were struggling. You made me feel sad for you. Have you felt sorry for me, Sophie? Really? I chuckled without amusement. You never thought about me at all. We would have helped you if you'd needed it. I've never needed it. That is the point. While you were getting everything handed to you, the private school, the cars, the trips, the money for Yale, I was working on something real. I worked 80-hour weeks. I taught myself everything. I earned every single dollar. Chase was feverishly texting on his phone, plainly glancing at me. His eyes widened. Holy, she's speaking the truth. Lily Reed, the founder of Supply Sync. The transaction generated headlines. It is all here. Forbes described her as one of the most successful female tech entrepreneurs under 30. Laura grabbed his phone and hastily read, "There are pictures. Lily attends conferences. Lily met with, oh my God. Is that the governor?" Mom was weeping now, mascara dripping down her cheeks. "Lily, love, why are you keeping this from us? We are your family. We love you. Do you?" The question came out sharper than I had intended. Did you love me when you neglected my birthday 3 years in a row? Did you love me when you spent $200,000 on Sophie's schooling while giving me nothing? Did you adore me when I returned home for Christmas and you didn't have a stocking for me because you forgot I was coming? That's not fair. Dad remarked softly. Isn't it? Name one aspect of my life. One item that is not related to my profession. Name my best pal. Name my favorite meal. Name something that demonstrates you've paid attention to me over the previous decade. Silence. Sophie's face was flushed, and tears streamed down her cheeks. You're intentionally hurting me. You waited till my turn. Until everyone was celebrating my presence in my life, and you decided to steal it. Your moment. I couldn't stop laughing. Sophie, every moment has been your moment. You have been the focal point of every holiday, meal and family event for the past 28 years. This was not anything I had planned. I wasn't sure what I was going to say. But I am so weary of being invisible. You're jealous, Sophie screamed. You've always been jealous of me. I am not jealous of you, Sophie. I am sorry for you. That knocked her down cold. What? Everything you own was given to you. Your education, career options, and even your job. Dad called in favors to help you obtain the interview. Remember, you've never had to battle for anything, never had to prove yourself, and never had to question your ability to succeed on your own. And now you're marrying a man who makes good money and planning a life that's comfortable and expected. I hesitated. There's nothing wrong with that lifestyle. But it's nothing extraordinary, it is not remarkable. It's precisely what everyone expected you to have since that's all you've ever learned how to accept. Having things handed to you. Sophie leaped across the table at me. Chase drew her back as she yelled obscenities. Laura was fanning herself as if she may swoon. Mom was weeping into her napkin. Ryan and Ava sat still, eyes open. Dad finally discovered his voice. Lily, I think you should leave. Yeah. I rose up, tired. I think so too. I collected my coat and luggage, and as I approached the door, I glanced back to see them all gazing at me. Sophie in wrath, Mom and Dad in amazement and possibly embarrassment, Laura in naked jealousy. For what it's worth, I murmured gently. I didn't come here to ruin anything. I came here because I realized I don't need you to see me anymore. I see myself. I know what I'm worth, and it has nothing to do with money, but everything to do with the fact that I built the life I'm proud of on my own. I walked out, and I heard Sophie wailing, Laura's voice rising in excitement, Mom begging Dad to do something. I got in my Lexus and drove away. My phone started blowing up before I even hit the highway. Sophie was calling and texting, screaming at me through voicemail. Mom was crying, asking me to come back so we could talk. Dad was sending stern messages about family loyalty. Even Aunt Laura tried to call, probably to see if I'd invest in whatever scheme she was running. I blocked them all. 3 days later, I received an email from Sophie. It was long, rambling, full of accusations and hurt feelings, but buried in the middle was one sentence that caught my attention. Mom said, "You bought that house with Dad's money, which you must have stolen from the family business somehow." I laughed out loud in my new living room, looking out at the Charles River. They still couldn't believe it, that the invisible daughter, the afterthought, the one who was okay, had accomplished more than they could have imagined. I didn't react to the email, and my lawyer phoned a week after Thanksgiving. Your family's attorney got in touch. They argue you owe them recompense for your family's investment in your education and upbringing. They want $5 million. Tell them no. And inform them that if they approach me again, I will file a countersuit for mental anguish and child negligence. I've saved every transaction, bank statement, and record that indicates just how much they invested in Sophie versus me. I will make it public. I never heard from their lawyer again. Christmas came and went, and I spent it in Aspen with friends I'd made in the tech world, people who knew me for what I built, not for being someone's forgotten daughter. We skied, drank expensive wine, and celebrated our collective success, while my phone remained blissfully silent. In January, I received a message from an unknown number, which turned out to be my cousin Ryan. "Hello, Lily. I know things are weird with the family, but I wanted to say that what you did was fantastic. You inspired me. I'm going to work hard and create something of my own. Thank you for teaching me that it is possible. I gazed at the message for a long time. Then I said, "Thank you, Ryan. If you ever need help or simply want to speak, I'm here. Create something you are proud of. Perhaps some good will come out of that fiasco of a Thanksgiving after all." Sophie married in June. I wasn't invited, but I saw photographs on social media, and it looked stunning, just like Sophie's fantasy wedding. 6 months ago, I founded a new company focused on AI-driven logistics solutions, bringing in some of my best SupplySync employees. I didn't feel anything when I looked at those photos. No anger, sadness, or satisfaction. We're already getting interest from major players. This time, I'm not building in silence. I'm on panels, giving talks, and mentoring young women in tech. Last month, I was invited to speak at a tech conference at Yale. I almost said no, but then I remembered Sophie walking those halls, and how proud my parents had been, so I said yes. As I was leaving, a young woman approached me, clutching a notebook and looking nervous. My talk was about creating success from nothing, being underestimated, and turning invisibility into an advantage, and the audience hung on every word. The Q&A session lasted an hour because there were so many questions. "Hi, Miss Reed. I just wanted to thank you. I am a first-generation college student. I am here on scholarship, and my family has no idea what I am doing. They believe I should have stayed at home, gotten married, and lived a simpler life. Your tale helped me feel less alone." I held her. "You are not alone. And you're going to accomplish fantastic things. Do not let anyone make you feel invisible." She went, shedding happy tears. And I understood something. This was better than vengeance. This was purpose. My family still attempts to reach out on occasion. Mom sends cards on my birthday, which is strange because she recalls it so quickly. Dad emails tech articles as if he's always been interested. Sophie sent me a message last month saying she was pregnant and thought I should know. I don't respond, not out of cruelty, but because I've built a life that doesn't include them. I have friends who celebrate my victories and support me through challenges. I have colleagues who respect my expertise. I have a future I'm excited about, full of possibilities I've created. I have peace. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how everything happened, if I wish I'd handled Thanksgiving differently. The truth is, I don't know. Maybe I could have been more tactful, less dramatic. Maybe I should have told them years ago or never told them at all. But I think about that 9-year-old girl watching her sister get a BMW, internalizing the message that she wasn't worth investing in. I think about every dismissive comment, every forgotten moment, every time I was just Finn. And I think about the woman I became despite all of that, or maybe because of it. No, I don't regret it. I earned my invisibility, and then my visibility, and I did it my way on my terms. The money is nice, and the success is gratifying, but the best part is that I finally see myself clearly, which is worth more than $25 million, more than any validation my family could offer. I'm no longer invisible. I'm just now visible to the people who count, including myself and my father. At Thanksgiving dinner, after I broke the news of my $25 million and the acquisition, after Sophie's tantrum and Laura's scream, after all the turmoil erupted, he sat there silently, gazing at his plate. He didn't defend me or them. He didn't apologize for all those years of neglect or try to justify the inequality. He didn't congratulate me or express pride. He just sat there, fork in hand, looking at a man who realized too late that he had bet on the wrong daughter his entire life and lost everything that mattered in the process. That stillness conveyed more than any words could.